10 Fifth Life Factors. Welcome Sinai Fleary, and she will make that proper pronunciation for us. Sinai hailed from London, UK. She is a journalist and a publisher. She publishes a magazine called Jus Jah, which focuses on reggae and Rastafarian culture. She also focuses on issues that affects the Black community or Black diaspora. She hails from St. Vincent, and her most recent advocacy has to do with the Windrush Experience that she talks a lot about via social media and other podcasts and the magazines that she's involved in. She also conducts workshops with educational workshops for primary school children between the ages of 4 to 11, and for them to learn more about the Windrush experiences or other Black history. Welcome, Sinai.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so your background is very rich in terms of journalism and the media. So share more. I'm sure there's so much more that I did not capture. So tell us more about your background.
Okay, so I was born in London in 1984 to Caribbean parents. My dad is from Grenada and my mom is from St. Vincent. I was raised in West London in a traditional Caribbean household with 7 brothers and sisters, so a big family. Initially, I didn't know I wanted to go into journalism, but I was always passionate about writing from a very young age. I went to college, I went to university, I studied business studies and marketing. And then I sort of found myself within that space as a career, but I didn't find it very fulfilling. And in 2007, 2008, I was thinking about a career shift. And then it wasn't until maybe about 2010 and go into journalism. It was something that I'd always wanted to do, but I just didn't know how to get into it. It was a very elitist career at the time. There wasn't many Black journalists and definitely not many Caribbean journalists in the UK at the time. So it was an industry where I wasn't sure how I could enter. In about 2015, I did some research and I found out what I needed, that I needed to retrain, that I needed to gain my NCTJ, which is the national and professional qualification that classifies you as a journalist. And I applied and I went and I completed the course at the top journalism school in the UK. And from there, I've been freelancing, I've been covering news, entertainment, writing features. And then I just really found my way. You know, I've met some great people along the way who have really helped me, who've given me that first byline in the newspaper, or who's given me that first cover story. And it just grew from there. I found that I found my feet as a journalist, and I found my passion covering issues that relate to the Black community, that relate to Caribbean culture, that relate to music. And that's what's been my driving force, is to get these stories out there for people to read and to really learn about who we really are.
And so is the Jus Jah Magazine, is it a subscription or is it just through simple advertisement? We'll explain that.
Okay, so Jus Jah Magazine is an actual print magazine, and it's also available online. People can buy single issues, they can subscribe for a year, and we ship the hard copies worldwide, or people can download and read it online on their tablets, on their laptops from anywhere in the world. And that Jus Jah was born out of a frustration. At the time, there wasn't really a magazine for reggae music and reggae artists. You know, I would go into the local magazine stores and news agents, and there would be magazines for rock artists, for pop artists, for hip hop artists, for soul artists, but never a publication for reggae artists. And that really bothered me. I was like, I want to read about them. I want to know what they're doing. I want to read the interviews. And, you know, I traveled back to Jamaica, where some of my family come from as well. And I was blown away by how rich the culture was, how powerful the culture was. And I really enjoyed every moment of my time in Jamaica. And when I came back to London, it was like there was nowhere I could keep up with what was happening. Back then, we didn't have social media how we have it now. And the idea came, why don't I create a magazine? Why don't I get these artists in this magazine and share what they're doing? And that's really how it started. It's been hard at times, but then at the same time, it's been really rewarding to see so many incredible artists just say, yeah, I'll do an interview. Yeah, you can put me on the cover. I've had so many incredible moments with this magazine, and it's been an incredible journey. And, you know, the support has been fantastic. The issue I just held up, I did this one in collaboration with Peter Tosh's family last year to honor him and really tell his story and celebrate who he was as a musician and also as an activist. And that's the kind of thing that really drives me, is being able to highlight our legends and really celebrate them within our magazine.
And what has been your biggest, story so far? I mean, you were saying that you're highlighting reggae artists, you're, kind of recruiting them to be part of the magazines and so on. Is it just the famous ones, or the up and coming ones, or the ones that are somewhere in the middle trying to find their platform? Who are the ones you're seeking out, and what's your biggest story?
The thing with Jus Jah Magazine is that it's a magazine for all. So it's for established artists, as well as we have a space for our community champions who may not be musicians, but they may be a youth worker working with the youth in the community. They might not be famous, but they're doing amazing groundwork. There's a space for them. There's a section in the magazine called Salute Our Elders. And that could be somebody in our community who is of age, who's, matured, but they have a story to tell. So Jus Jah Magazine is really for the people and by the people, and not just necessarily for the famous and established artists, but also for the up and coming, and also for the everyday man and woman doing great things as well. In terms of, the biggest stories, we've covered so many, in terms of artists. The Peter Tosh collaboration was definitely a career highlight for us, because he's an artist that I grew up on. He's an artist that really shaped me as a young woman. He's an artist that my parents admired and adored. And to be able to honor him and his legacy in this way was really, really important to me. But also it's about other creatives within the space who are not artists. It's about giving them a platform to tell their story. So in this issue, this is a famous Jamaican portrait artist. He's no longer with us. His name is Daniel Hartman, and he starred in The Harder They Come with Jimmy Cliff. Okay. And he's a famous Jamaican portrait artist, and did some incredible artwork. And what we did was we collaborated with his son, and we was able to show his artwork and his story, and how his images helped to give people courage and encouragement at a time when they were afraid to be who they were, So that's been really important. And I think a lot of it is to do with just the average stories. I've documented stories of elders who, through no fault of their own, have suffered, but they are still triumphing, they are still persevering with life. And those are the stories that really, really capture me.
So it sounds as if you're trying to cut across a different genre, getting, do you notice any significant change or participation then in terms of music or reggae music, and who is coming in, or who is leaving? Because it's not just Jamaica. reggae now is worldwide. So can you tell us some of the representations that you've seen in terms of the different ethnic groups that are kind of coming into reggae?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, growing up in the 80s, reggae was very much, you know, it was a Jamaican genre. It is still very much a Jamaican genre, you know, let's not get it twisted. But I think in recent years, I've seen, sorry, someone's trying to call me. Sorry about that. I should have turned that phone off before we started. In recent years, I've seen, you know, more reggae artists from neighboring Caribbean islands. So I know reggae is now huge in islands like Trinidad and Tobago, and they have amazing artists as well. And I think over the years, we've seen reggae really branch out internationally. There's a lot of reggae artists across Europe who dominate the reggae festivals and who are doing really well there. But I think what's really important to note is that reggae will always be Jamaican. You know, that's the foundation, that's the roots, that's where it all began. And I think no matter how many different variants we get, whether it be reggaeton or whether it be Afro reggae, what we're seeing now in parts of Africa and West Africa, it's important to always acknowledge the roots. You know, we wouldn't have all these offsprings if it wasn't for, you know, the Bunny Wailers, the Peter Tosh, the Bob Marley, the Dennis Brown, the Beres Hammond. And in terms of like the readership of the magazine, I've noticed that's changed over the last few years with a lot more interest from Japan. You know, Japan has really surprised me in the sense, I know it's been a big hub for reggae music in terms of sound system culture. It's always been there. Japanese people have always had that interest in Jamaican music. But we had a lot of readers subscribe from Japan and across Europe as well, whereas perhaps a few years ago, you know, most of our readers were based in the UK, the Caribbean, and the US. Now we're seeing people subscribe from as far as Australia. And I'm like, wow. You know, but that just goes to show the power that is in the music, that it's able to touch anybody, no matter where they live, no matter what language they speak, no matter what social class. And I think that's really, really important. But also, I wish people respected reggae a lot more than they do. I don't think they acknowledge the influence. I don't think they acknowledge the power it has in terms of how it's shaped who we are culturally, socially, how it's changed politics, how it's changed religion. So I really would like to see more respect given to that genre and its artists.
Great, and that's a good point. So I'll come back to that, but I just want to touch on something that you said also about how reggae has moved across the continent, basically, and you're surprised at, you know, some of the groups that have shown their interest. The recent story that you did for Peter about Peter Touch, was there any discussion about the resemblance of his music, or should I say Lucky Dube's resemblance, music resemblance to Peter Tosh? I hope I'm saying it correctly. And the similarities then. Did that came up? Because even though this is one of my biggest concern as well, you talk about the respect and the different offshoot or off branch of reggae, like reggaeton or Afrobeats reggae. But it's somewhat, you know, some people say it's watered down, and it's taken away from its authenticity of the roots of reggae. Talk about that. Lucky Dube's resemblance to Peter Tosh in terms of his music, and the offshoot beats that are kind of modifying or kind of watering down their roots of reggae.
I think that's a very good point. The Lucky Dube conversation didn't actually come up with Peter's daughter. it didn't come up at all. You know, the conversation was pretty much about, you know, how much her father sacrificed in terms of being so outspoken on issues, and, you know, the struggles he went through, and how his message is still very important today as we go through Black Lives Matter and other issues. You know, it was about talking about Peter's lyrical content and how it's still very much relevant in this day and age. I think, you know, things always change and evolve. So I think even if we go back a bit and we look at, you know, the emergence of, say, you know, the Sizzler Kalunjis, the Capletons, the Anthony B's, people might say reggae changed from Bob Marley and Peter Tosh to Sizzler and Capleton, and they might have said, oh, are they watering it down? Are they adding to it, or are they taking? So I don't know. I wouldn't want to say. I think in terms of traditional reggae beats, a lot of things have been changed and have been watered down. But what I would hope stays the same is the lyrical content, the message, you know. But I think it's important. You can't really call a track reggae unless it has that one drop feel. So I think we're really at a strange place right now in music where everybody wants to be new and fresh and hip. But then at the same time, you know, you don't want to change things too much that you don't know what genre it fits into. You know, we've been having these discussions recently when people were talking about, say, the best reggae category at the Grammys, and they were like, well, this person is a dancehall artist. Why are they in this category? I think there's lots of conversations to be had about reggae. I think reggae is in a really exciting place. My hope is that the artists really benefit from the changes that are happening right now, whether we look at streaming or whether we look at licensing of songs. That's my biggest concern, is that reggae is such a powerful force. You know, Jamaica is such a powerful force when it comes to culture and influence, is that I really hope that the people on the ground there benefit from their culture and from their music. And it's not a case of, you know, people coming in and profiting, and then when you go back to Jamaica in 5 years' time, things haven't really improved on the ground, you know? So I think there's so many conversations to be had, and I would love to see, you know, this new generation of reggae artists and the older generation as well really benefit from the opportunities that are there in the music business, whether, like I said, whether it's the streaming that's now happening, whether it's the licensing, you know, whether it's merchandise. I always say this, I was like, I would love to see Capleton come out with a line of clothing, you know, of his suits. I would love to see that clothing line of menswear suits that Capleton always wears, that are obviously custom made for him. But I just feel like there's so many opportunities, and I feel like, I don't want to say they're getting left behind, but I think when we look at other genres of music, they've been able to really tap into all sorts of revenues, all sorts of opportunities. And I just feel like reggae is either being excluded on purpose because they know the power, or it's a case of, you know, we need the right people in the right positions to make these opportunities happen for the artists on the ground.
There may be some exploitation there in terms of the brand. And, you know, you're correct in pointing out, you know, or questioning whether or not, you know, these artists who work so hard to promote their goods, are they benefiting? Are they getting the benefits? Are they honing their musical rights and things like that? I believe, with the base of the position that you're in, Sinai, it would be so wonderful if you could sit and have conversation with two powerful Jamaican women who are, you know, in the business of promoting Jamaica, Jamaicans' music, Jamaicans' reggae culture, and even the Rastafarian culture. Babsy Grange and Caroline Cooper. I don't know if you've ever heard of those two.
I have heard of Babsy Grange. I haven't heard of Caroline Cooper. I know Babsy is the Minister of Culture for Jamaica at the moment.
And Caroline Cooper, she is a professor at the University of the West Indies, and that's her entire writing is about reggae music, reggae culture, Jamaican culture, and anything that has to do with Black music. So this is something you could probably look into. because they would definitely, in terms of also in, branding and whether or not Jamaicans have rights to it. You mentioned like Capleton and, line of clothing and so on. Recently, the Clark's shoe manufacturer, they came out and they adopted the Jamaican colors to promote their shoes. Is that embracing a reggae culture or exploiting it?
Oh, you put me on the spot.
And
Okay.
You can say
When I first
you can say pass.
No, that's fine. I'm gonna be honest. When I first saw the shoe, I was like, why has it taken so long? Because I know the affiliation with Clarks and Jamaican people. I know how much they love and cherish their Clarks. Right. And I would have thought that would have happened already. There would have been some sort of celebration, whether it be a special Jamaican independence pair of Clarks, something. Yeah, my first thought was, wow, this hasn't happened before. But then also there was a part of me that was like, when are we collectively as Black people, whether we be Jamaican, Grenadian, or whatever, or Trinidadian, it doesn't matter, when are we going to do for self? When are we going to find an amazing shoemaker in Jamaica who can make shoes just as good as Clark's, and we support and build up that person until we are name dropping his brand in our songs? I am all for people embracing these major brands, but I have a problem where everything that we glorify, mention in our music, it's not Jamaican owned, it's not Black owned, it's not Caribbean owned. Talking about certain designer clothes that are made in Italy in your song and you're in Jamaica, yeah, it might make you feel good, it might give you a sense of status to have these certain belts or shoes, but what is that doing for the average Jamaican or Caribbean person? Mm-hmm. So that was my sort of thought, like, okay, this is nice, but why didn't it happen already? And then also in my mind was like, how much of these proceeds are going to go back to Jamaica? Right. Is a percentage of the sales of these shoes going to go back and build a school, a hospital, fix any roads? That was also what came into my mind, rather than just being like, wow, these shoes, look, they have the Jamaican flag on it. But I understand the cultural connection, mm-hmm. and I understand that it's something to celebrate. But at the same time, I'm very, very cautious of these big companies coming and sticking some colors on something and they go, and not really helping the people on the ground.
An excellent point, and possibly this is another advocacy that you can take on and put it out there. Ask a question: what is Clark's intention of adopting the Jamaican colors? Are you going to build up some schools? Are you going to, kind of help in terms of the Jamaican structure? There's a lot of things that we need, but I also like the point that you make about how Jamaican, not just in reggae, but in dancehall music, how they promote brands. Yes. I mean, every time I listen to Beanie Man's, I'm drinking, I think he said drinking Pepsi and Red Bull. And I'm like, I don't know if you ever heard of that song. And you see, he's not just singing it, but he's drinking it. And I'm like, everybody's, all of a sudden you go to Jamaica, that's what people are drinking because he's promoting it. And who is actually the brand ambassador for Jamaica pertaining to that area of the culture? And it takes you, a member of the diaspora, someone who is from whose parents are from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to be advocating for Jamaica. Isn't that interesting? And I hope, so we adopt you, my sister, we adopt you.
Thank you. I've heard that quite a lot. I've been told, you know, I can get a Jamaican passport and stuff, but that's not why I do it. I do it because, you know, I was brought up, so my parents are Rastafarian, so I was very much brought up in a Rastafarian household, and we was always taught the importance of knowing yourself and knowing your culture and your history and your roots. And my parents were very clear about the importance of Jamaica in terms of who we are. You know, we wouldn't be brought up in a Rastafarian household because if it's for Jamaica, because that's where the foundations are of the Rastafarian movement. So it was very important for us to understand who we are and to appreciate, you know, the different aspects and richness in each culture, in each island. You know, my mom was from St. Vincent, my dad is from Grenada, so it was always like an appreciation. We're going to learn something about Grenada, and we're going to learn something about St. Vincent. When we went to visit Grenada and learn about Grenadian culture, it was hop on a boat and learn about St. Vincent, and we always had that balance. And as I grew older and I started to learn more about who I was as a Rasta woman, it was only right that I went back to Jamaica, the root, to study and to understand, how did this movement, you know, become? How was it birthed? What happened? And that's when I got a real appreciation for the islands. You know, the island is so small in comparison to the rest of the world, but has given so much. And yeah, every time I go to Jamaica, I have family there now. You know, my husband is Jamaican. So every time I go there, it's like a homecoming, you know, and I really love the place. I love the people. And there's always a sense of warmth and welcomeness when I go there. So yeah, I mean, I would take the honorary Jamaican adoption from you with open arms, you know.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for this advocacy. Let's and I want to turn to something that is more current, or should I say a crisis that is occurring in St. Vincent. And you shout out your concerns on social media about the lack of media coverage. And I think some of what you said went viral. People start responding to you and kind of pointing out similarities. People are sharing, well, it was covered here, it was covered there. But your main concern was, wait a minute, where is mainstream media in this? And what are they doing? And so I want to ask you, and this is your time to share even more so, just what exactly is it that we're not capturing in the media pertaining to St. Vincent? Because they will say, BBC will say, well, we're covering what we can. Are you looking for the emotional side of the coverage, where the displacement and the concerns of family members in the diaspora regarding? So talk more about that.
Okay, so the reason firstly why I tweeted that was, at the time that I tweeted that message, I watched the news. Like, as a journalist, the news is all constantly on. And when this volcano was erupting and there was warnings, there's been warnings for like a couple of months now that the volcano might erupt, but there was nothing reported on the news. I found out through social media and through family on the ground in St. Vincent. But when I tweeted, there's no mainstream media coverage, at the time there was very little. And it was upsetting for people in my family and other family members who rely on news from the TV. Like, there's a whole generation of people who don't use social media. They rely on the television, they rely on the radio. And if there's nothing there for them and they have to come to me and say, is there anything on Facebook? I'm not on Facebook, can you see? I spent 2 whole days screenshotting things to send to my mom for her to pass on to other family members. And that shouldn't have to be. If there is a major crisis happening in a country, you should be there. If you can't get a flight to St. Vincent, obviously we're in COVID, we're in lockdown. There are brilliant local journalists on the ground that you could probably find on social media, because I've found them within 2 minutes. And you can pay them to report from smartphone and send it to you, and you can broadcast that here in the UK. It's not hard. I just found it really disheartening that there wasn't much news at the time of when I tweeted it, and we was relying on social media. And I felt like, firstly, we had a Commonwealth Day celebration in the UK not too long ago, where, you know, the Queen was talking about how good it is to be in the Commonwealth and we're all friends and stuff like that. And here we have a Commonwealth country, St. Vincent, where the Queen is still the head of state, in a humanitarian crisis, and there's not a peep on the news. I found that really hypocritical. And then also the idea that, you know, St. Vincent is a country in the Caribbean where people have migrated from and come to this country in their time of need after World War II to help rebuild this country. You invited them here, they came, they helped you, they rebuilt the country, and now they're in need, or their children and grandchildren are in need. It's like you turn your back on them. Like, I found it so insulting for so many reasons. And then another part was, you know, British people go on holiday to the Caribbean, and it's the Caribbean seen as their playground. It's where they can go and take nice pictures for social media. There's nice beaches, you know, they can live in nice. But when it comes to the real issues on the ground that affect the everyday Caribbean person, there just doesn't seem to be a care. So that's where that tweet came from, was all of this frustration. I said, I'm going to put it in a tweet, and whatever happens, happens. And it was just me speaking my mind, because like I said, there was people who couldn't find the news. I mean, I had so many comments, oh, we covered it. And then when I clicked on the link, it was like a 45-second news report. And for me, that's not enough. That's not enough where you're, you know, you've got a whole hour of a news program and you dedicate 2 minutes to what's happening in St. Vincent. There's families here who still have family back on that island, and they need to know what's happening. When you're doing news, it's not just about catering to the masses. You have to try and cater to everybody. And I think there's a disconnect in terms of people think those who came here during the Windrush period, you know, they don't have no connection back home. And that's not true. A lot of us still have family. A lot of us are going back every year to see our family and our friends. And, you know, so the news needs to be representative of the communities that live here in the UK. And at the moment, I don't feel like it is.
Well, you know, someone likened, you know, the limited or the low coverage to like the Olympics, where they only show, the major networks only show people from the major country and not the people from the small country. And some also say that, you know what, the Queen is dealing with the death of her husband, so the UK media is saturated with that, even though now we're learning that there's thousands of criticism that is about that in terms of that coverage. So it is likely that the media there is just torn in some way, but we're not making excuses for them. Your response is loud and clear. But tell me what you've learned. I want to understand from your perspective. Help me walk in your shoes. You know, for you being almost a native then of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in terms of your parents. What have you learned from just, you know, the little research that you've done? What is happening to the people there? You know, their displacement, where are they going? I know there's tons of food and water, and a lot of toiletries are being sent there, but what is actually happening?
So I think the last report I got was people in the red zone. So the red zone is like at the top of the island where Le Soufrière is located. So they have all been told to move down the islands and come out of the danger zone. From what I've understood is that a lot of people did leave because the threat of the volcano eruption was really high, but also there are many people who chose to stay. So within that region, there is a lot of farmers and a lot of people who do agricultural work, and they chose to stay with their livestock and stay with their produce. They didn't want to leave it. And in general as well, like a lot of people just didn't want to leave their homes, you know, places that they grew up. They didn't want to leave their possessions because they didn't know what was going to happen to those, and the fear of having to start back over. For me, I know family members have left the red zone and gone further down the island, but they are still all experiencing heavy volcanic ash falling. You know, there's been a few tremors in terms of minor earthquakes across the island. And, you know, it's been really, really hard in terms of visibility. The visibility is poor because of all the dust and the falling ash. And I know a lot of the people who did leave St. Vincent during the initial evacuation stage, they've gone to neighboring islands like Barbados, like Grenada, and also St. Lucia. But those islands have now also started to experience falling ash, poor visibility as well. In terms of conditions, we know, I think the Prime Minister Gonzalez recently updated everybody saying that the water supplies had been contaminated and that the island was perhaps running low on water. So that's why over the last 24 hours, we've seen a lot of shipment of bottled water coming in from Grenada, as far as Venezuela as well. I think what's next would be, I think what's missing from these stories and these updates is really seeing the human impact. We haven't spoken to anybody, you know, we haven't seen any interviews with people about what's happening, you know, where did you leave, or people in these shelters. I think that is what's next, and that's what people are waiting for, especially those with family members. They want to see people getting help. We want to see all this aid that's been collected. We want to see it distributed to the people now, because I feel like a lot of us are feeling like, okay, this is great, but we need to see it in the hands of Vincentians. You know, we've heard the horror stories of what happened in Haiti, where they had that awful earthquake in 2010, and all this aid was collected, but yet still, years later, people were still suffering. And I think people are watching all these initiatives, all this fundraising, and they're saying, yes, it's great, but I think a lot of us are on edge because we want to ensure it gets to the people and doesn't end up being mismanaged or, you know, failing to reach the people who need it most. And I feel like that's what we need to be seeing from our news reports and from our updates now, is people really being cared for. I know today, early this morning, there was an update saying that there was concerns about the spread of COVID-19 in the evacuation centres, but that hasn't been confirmed in terms of numbers, but we do know that is a cause for concern. I think it's just important about seeing the people get the help. And I mean, all the fundraising that's been happening, I'm not dismissing it and saying it's not great. I want to applaud everybody who has donated money or collected toiletries or shipped things and done a really good job. But I feel what's really important is that it does get to the people. And that goes for the money that's been raised on all these GoFundMe platforms as well. You know, it's important we know who are behind these fundraising initiatives and to ensure that it gets to the people who need it the most. And it's not a case of people just using a tragedy as a chance for them to make a quick buck.
And we know that's going to happen. There's no way to tell at this point. There's no oversight, I'm sure, as to the amount of GoFundMe that's out there. You mentioned Haiti as in terms of, you know, having the relief donation sent to them and it didn't get to the people. Similar fate occurs in Puerto Rico as well, with the problems that they had there. However, you know, some of the critics are like, you know, we have to be careful too with the overabundance of donation in terms of goods. Because if you're talking about people who are displaced and in shelter, you know, it's almost like giving a homeless man a chicken or a turkey on Thanksgiving Day. It doesn't make any sense. So we have to be careful with that. So, you know, you talk about the emotional support that they need. Do you know what is the British role or Britain's role? And are they taking in refugees from St. Vincent's, because you're saying the surrounding islands are doing that and they themselves are being affected. As Britain kind of roll out the, the green carpet for St. Vincent's to come in and take their place among the Windrush generation.
As far as I know, not yet. That hasn't been announced. I think the most recent announcement came with a donation of £200,000 to the relief effort in St. Vincent. And then, of course, the Queen made her statement, saying she feels really sorry for what's happening on the islands. In terms of the UK open up its borders and letting Vincentians come here, that hasn't happened and that hasn't been put on the cards as of yet. I think because we are seeing, the neighboring Caribbean islands, really showing out and offering a hand extension and support and enabling them to go to Grenada or St. Lucia or Barbados or wherever it may be. I don't think the UK will step in just yet because help is elsewhere and help is nearer to St. Vincent at the moment. I mean, I think it would be a nice gesture. I think they did something similar when the volcano erupted in Montserrat many years ago in the 1990s. They did eventually offer to taking people from Montserrat to relocate to the UK because the island was devastated by the volcano that erupted there. It will be interesting to see. It will be definitely interesting to see what happens next. I just feel like, people are suffering and they need action now. They need safety now, and as well the emotional trauma that they must be going through.
Yeah.
That a volcano has erupted. Can they return home? I think a lot of families have also been separated because the scramble to get out, were they able to get everybody? Is really, really traumatic. And I think they're going to need help and support, like you said. It's like, we're donating now, but I feel like the recovery is going to be for months, if not years. The support that they're going to need is going to be for a very long time. But, I encourage everybody to donate what they can, but also look at long-term options in terms of how you can really help and support people, not just this week because it's a talking point, but also in the weeks and the months ahead.
Yes, because the aftermath is going to be, it's a lot of, reconstruction that has to be done in every single way. I'm surprised. Do you know, even in terms of local media in your area, every country have its embassy and ambassadorship? Is any word coming, or even a diaspora group that is representative of, the St. Vincent's and the Grenadines? Is there any word coming out of there that at least they can feed information to the different news outlet to let us know what is happening?
Yeah, actually, they've been really good. So, I mean, I know I've been critical of the mainstream media, but I must really applaud the black media companies, the Caribbean media companies, and also like the St. Vincent and the Grenadines High Commission. They have been excellent in terms of keeping us updated hourly about what's happening in St. Vincent. Even if there is lightning, they're tweeting there's been lightning, they have a picture. If there's been a little bit of a tremor or a small earthquake, they're letting you know. So I've found that the Caribbean media has been fantastic. Even, where you're from, the Jamaica Gleaner has been amazing in terms of keeping updates regularly across their social media about what's happening in St. Vincent. And also news outlets from Barbados and also St. Vincent as well. I think every single Caribbean island has played their part, and that's something that has really warmed my heart, actually. I often hear about this Caribbean connection and this brotherly love and sisterly love that we have, and I've really seen it play out in the last few days, and that is what gives me encouragement. And I really hope we can hang on to that, so that if any other island is facing a crisis, that we all rally around them, just like we've done this time, because we are all, one.
We are. And, I have to give kudos to the Jamaican Prime Minister. He was actually one of the first Prime Minister to reach out to offer help. and support. I don't know if you knew that. And yes, the Jamaican Glean has been very instrumental in kind of guiding us and sharing daily stories about sending pictures as well, about what is happening. Let's talk about your one of the other advocacy that you engage in. You're a very busy person. You talk about the Windrush experience. You said after World War II, they come for us, and they brought, those generational people to come into the UK to work and to build their hospitals, build their school systems, and doing all interesting stuff. But we know the crisis that occurred several years, and it's still ongoing, actually. Tell us about that and your advocacy work in terms of the educational workshop with the children to kind of, let them know the history and what is actually happening.
Yeah, so like I said, my mom and dad are from St. Vincent and Grenada. My grandparents actually came here, I think in the 50s, and my mom came to London in 1966, and my dad came in 1963 from Grenada. So they weren't actually born here. They were born in the Caribbean, and they came here as children, and their story is not unique, but also very common with what was happening at the time. A lot of Caribbean parents were leaving their children with their grandparents, aunties and uncles to come to the UK for work and what they saw as a better opportunity. So when the Windrush scandal, as it's known, occurred and started making its way in the media. The Windrush scandal is basically, so my grandparents and parents who came here legally, and what happened was, the government in 2010, I think it was, they wanted to get tough on immigration. So there was a lot of changes to the laws, and you had to have proof of how you got into the country to get certain things. And what happened is in 2010, our Home Office, who looks after all the records of people who've come in and out of the country, they destroyed the Windrush landing cards. So one of the only forms of proof that you came here legally, that was destroyed. And what that did was, with the changes to immigration policy, you now had to prove your status to get a job, to rent a house, to open a bank account. Whereas before you didn't need that. A lot of people from the Caribbean were getting caught in this net where they couldn't prove their status. They were saying, I came here as a child, but yet there was no record of them at the Home Office. And a lot of them were deemed and mislabeled illegal. So imagine you've lived somewhere since you were 6 years old, and then you've worked, you've gone to school here, you've paid your taxes, and then all of a sudden at 65 years old, you're told you're an illegal immigrant, you can't go to the hospital and get treatment, you can't get a job, you have no access to your pension. A lot of them were left desolate, and stories started to emerge about what was happening, and that got labelled as the Windrush scandal here in the UK. And as these stories emerged in the media, some people were also deported back to the islands that they came from at 4 years old, and some of them had never been back. It really touched me, because like I said, I'm from a Caribbean background. That could have been my grandmother who was deported back to St. Vincent, even though she'd been here for so long and contributed to society. So through my journalism work, I started researching what was happening. I started reporting on it, inviting people in to tell their story, what happened to them. And it was horrific. It was traumatic hearing people's stories. And throughout the last few years, we've unfortunately heard that so many people who've been fighting to get their status have died fighting. We've heard stories of people in hospital beds wanting to be able to visit the Caribbean island they left as a child and haven't been able to because they can't prove their status, die in hospital beds. So it's been really, really traumatic. And I think through that, for me, it was like, okay, what can I do? How can I use my voice to highlight what's happening and try and help and put things right? And that's what I did with my journalism. It was about uncovering these stories and also trying to help them understand how they can get compensation. You know, we've had a compensation scheme launched in April 2019 for people who were wrongly told they were an illegal immigrant when they had every right to be here. And I've been really pointing people in that direction, saying, look, you can claim compensation. This is where you go. Also, there's a scheme set up where people can sort out their status and finally try and get their British citizenship. But then also with all this work as a journalist, it was important for me, like, how do we tell these stories to the younger generation? And for me, it was about creating a fun but educational and truthful workshop and presentation that I could take into schools, that I could tell them why people from the Caribbean came here, how they contributed to society, how they made the UK better, you know, the sort of jobs they did, how they changed laws, how they changed culture, how they changed language. And it's a really fun presentation, but at the same time, it gets them to think and understand, like, oh, that's why if I go into the supermarket, for instance, there's a world food aisle. I can find food from Jamaica. Like, a lot of the children, if I ask them, do they know what a Jamaican patty is? Everybody puts their hand up. I said, you wouldn't have that if people from Jamaica didn't come here in the UK all those years ago and demand that they have their traditional foods in this country. You wouldn't be enjoying all these wonderful foods now. And it's about making those connections to every life, back to that generation and how they've enriched this country. So that's what the workshops are about, and they've been really well received.
What are some of the questions? Because, you know, of course, when you're talking to, you know, children, and just for them to visualize what is happening, the supermarket aisle, world food aisle is a very good example. What are some of the questions that they ask when you're telling them about, you know, grandma, grandpa, great grand comes here and this is what's going on?
I think the most common question is, why did they come here? Why did they leave the beach and the nice weather? Why? They don't understand that at the time, you know, life was really hard in the Caribbean, and a lot of them wanted to come here and work hard so that they could have a better life. But I think also a very common question is, why are we not taught about this, miss? You know, I come in for the day and I do what I do. And a lot of them saying, miss, you should be here every day. We should learn about this every day. And I think that's something that has been an ongoing discussion, especially since last year with the killing of George Floyd in America, and the whole discussions around race and racism and institutional racism in the UK. Is we are now having conversations about including more Black history in our school curriculum so that children know about the contributions that people have made to this country. And I think it would help. You know, I think our young people, when they grow up, they would be less bigoted. They would have a better understanding. They will value people, you know, they would see a value, rather than they are being forced the same old racist and stereotypical narrative of Black people that they still getting taught. You know, they're only taught about slavery through the eyes of the master. Oh, slavery was a good thing. You know, what about the victims? What about those who suffered? You know, they're always taught colonialism was great, the empire was great. No, it wasn't. And that's the honest truth. And I feel like there's a lot of overhaul that needs to be done to our educational system and all our systems, so that it reflects a true picture of who people are and what they brought to this country.
And so the Windrush, you know, scandal experience is part of the colonial, you know, structure. You know, you use the oppressed, and you continue to oppress them, and when you're ready, you just simply discard of them, and that is exactly what is happening. It sounds to me the presence of that curriculum in terms of the history from the oppressors' eyes should be part of that curriculum. So the fact that you're in publishing and journalism, a book, Sinai, the Rasta Girl, and the Windrush Experience, a little book for the primary school girls, filled with all these beautiful island colors. That would be perfect to kind of give young children inside view, of, in their age appropriate language of what it looks like, what it feels like, the emotional side of it. Very, very interesting. And I do appreciate that kind of passion and advocacy. And I'm sure, even in Jamaica or even in the island, that workshop would benefit kids as well, because many do not even understand it. When I was young too, and I hear about, relatives traveling to the UK, I never dreamt that this would be their outcome, that they're getting deported, So walking in those shoes and, for little girls to kind of see how the journey unfolds would be such a great little storybook for children. So here's another question for you. All the work that you do, and there's so much things to talk about, especially what is going on in Britain and these countries within the Commonwealth, and a lot of questions that's been over the years about whether or not many countries should be just remove themselves from the Commonwealth. The conversation came up again with the revelations from Meghan Markle. I'm sure, we see some of the talking points from LBC and all those different outlets, their take and all the scandal that emerged from that and people getting fired and all that. What is your take on it? And should countries do more consideration and take serious steps to have conversations with the monarchy and say, remove themselves from it, or engage in some type of structural change? Did Meghan's story appeal to you? Talk about all of
that. Okay, firstly with Meghan, when they did the interview with Oprah, I was shocked that they actually mentioned that racism played a part in how she felt and their decision to leave the UK. I know, when I say I'm shocked, I just didn't know that they would actually come out and say it, because normally when these things happen, especially in the upper echelons of society, it's all very hush hush. No, you don't say that, So for me, I thought it was really brave. But this wasn't the first time we got a glimpse that there was issues to do with racism. Prince Harry had issued statements countless times in the UK, telling certain areas of the press that your reporting is biased and steeped in racism and has racial undertones. So he's called it out before, and that problem had been there, I think, in the press for a long time. I think just Meghan coming into the royal family sort of added oil to the flames. People didn't want to see that. They didn't want to see that change. And it's very, very unfortunate what she's had to go through and what she's had to endure. And I really hope that, she's in a better place, mentally, and she's able to really look after herself and her well-being, because at times it was very, very toxic to see these headlines, to see these pictures, to see these wordings and stuff, like headlines saying straight out of Compton, linking her to Compton and gang life. And we're like, what would you have had this headline if Prince Harry had married a white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes? I don't think so, and it was just really, really blatant. I think the Black community saw it, even though people were saying, oh, that's not racist, because in Britain, the idea of racism is very, what's the word?
Covert?
It's very plain. It's very plain. So they think if they're not calling you the N-word, then it's not racism, but if they're comparing your baby to a monkey, oh, that's not racism because it doesn't say the N-word. You know, the idea of racism is very narrow, whereas racism can be array of things. And I think that was the most frustrating part, is that Black Twitter was calling stuff out that's racist, and then we would have a flood of some white people, you know, come in and saying that's not racism. You know, who are you to tell us what is racism and what's not? We know what's offensive to us. You know, just like a ginger-haired person would know what is offensive to them as a ginger-haired person, you know. And I think that was the thing that was most frustrating, was people trying to shut us up. You know, you would write a piece in the newspaper, and as soon as it would be published and your name would be tagged as the author, you would have comments saying you don't know what you're talking about. And that was the hard part. But I think collectively, being in a space like Twitter, where, you know, all the Black journalists kind of have each other's back, and, you know, the Black community in general, just not journalists, everyone was speaking out and saying, no, that's not right. That was what came out of it. That was good. In terms of whether or not I think Caribbean nations should get rid of the Queen as the head of state, I feel like I don't understand how a country can be truly independent if the head of state is still, you know, from the place that had you under, you know, a suppressive regime, or that colonized you. I don't understand how you could be free if they're still your head of state. I mean, I know the Caribbean is very proud, and you know, we've created our own cultures and our own music, and we have our own way of doing things, which is all fantastic. But I feel like there's still a lot that needs to be changed and overhauled. We still very much have colonial systems in place. We still have colonial ideals in place, colonial standards of beauty in place. You know, and those are the things that we need to shake off. You know, we've shaken off the shackles of slavery. Now it's about shaking off mentally things that are still holding us back, like in the 1900s, you know. And for me, I just feel like I don't see how you can be truly independent with the Queen still as head of state. People might say, oh, she doesn't do anything, she doesn't do, but then it's like she's the head of state, so she still has a say. I mean, I would like to see the Caribbean really take things into their own hands, you know. And I feel like collectively there's amazing things we could do, like we've seen with the volcano relief support. If we rally around each other and we start trading amongst ourselves, and we would become a force to be reckoned with. And I feel like there are people in the Caribbean who are capable, more than capable, of leading our nations to greatness, you know. And I don't feel like we need to be, you know, sort of overseen by the Queen anymore. I feel like we are capable, and more than capable, of leading ourselves to prosperity and greatness.
There's this concept.
And I know the Queen is, I was going to say, and the Queen is on age, so I'm sure she might not want all that responsibility of all those islands.
Well, and I'm sure she do want those responsibilities. There's this concept, you know, of change called the policy window. Some have said that, you know, at this point, using the Meghan Markle situation is not a very good policy window to advocate for change, because there's more people who do not believe in her story. And so we have to wait for an opportunity cycle. And so, you know, it's almost as if it's being withered away or winding down from the height that it was in the week that it occurred, because the interest that should have shown is not there in terms of having structural change. First of all, just the response alone from the monarchy. Leave it alone. It's none of your business or personal business. We're going to deal with it within our personal way, and that's it. Failing to recognize that it's a global. The fact that we have you are the head of the Commonwealth nations, and Meghan look like us, it does affect, it is not a personal issue, it is bigger than that. Do you agree that we should wait for a greater policy window, or this we can use this as a stepping stone towards structural change?
I think we've waited too long. You know, we've done all the waiting where we can wait. You know, we've had landmark cases in the UK, you know, where, for example, the murder of Stephen Lawrence in 1993, where a 18-year-old black boy was killed unprovoked. And, you know, the whole investigation into that, you know, we had the Metropolitan Police labeled as institutionally racist. That was our chance for change. You know, have we experienced change since then? No, you know. And Meghan Markle coming out in 2021 saying that she's experienced racism and things need to change, and then you're telling us we have to wait again. I just feel like, why do we always have to wait? Why does the Black community always have to wait for a day when racism can stop? Do you know what I mean? Like, if we look at over the years, like, you know, when women were fighting for their rights, you know, women's rights and stuff, you know, they fought and things changed. But it seems like we're constantly having to fight. You know, we're constantly having to say we want change. And I just feel like we've been waiting too long. Our grandparents waited. You know, our parents waited.
Right.
You know, in 2021, you know, in 2020, we saw what happened with George Floyd. You know, things should have changed from then. And now this year they're saying, oh, we might have to wait again. You know, they've just killed another Black man in America while this trial for George Floyd is happening. And I just feel like when it comes to us and our issues, we're always put at the back of the queue. Oh, we're dealing with women's issues. Oh, we're dealing with homeless issues, or we're dealing with disability issues. Everybody's issues is important to them, but yet still we are always put last. And I just feel like, if not now, when? If not now, at the height of Black Lives Matter and everything that's going on and people speaking out and using social media, if not now, when? You know, and I don't want to be the sort of parent that doesn't use my voice and that doesn't try and push for change, you know, because it's not just about me, it's about those coming after me. Right. You know, it's about, one day I'm going to be a grandparent, and I don't want my grandchildren to be going through the same things I've had to go through. You know, and I'm sure my grandparents wouldn't want us to be going through the same thing. So I just feel like we're always told to wait, and I'm like, why? We've waited too long. We've waited 500 years. We're not waiting anymore. The time is now.
Well, climate change is more urgent, Sinai, so that's on the agenda as well. So we're probably, 10 rows down from behind climate change. But you made some excellent point today. Something that I want to point out, that you mentioned how coy in a way racism is in the US, because we say it this way, and we're not being explicit in what we're saying. And so the sociology textbook call this implicit bias, or daily microaggressions, these kind of just gaslighting type of situations or statements that they bring about, that is so psychological damaging. And again, they are not walking in our shoes, as as we're seeing and experiencing it. And so you made an excellent point in saying that racism is in the eye of the person who is experiencing it. So we're on our last minute, and you're going to get the last word. From all the things that you've shared, what is the takeaway for you today? What is it that you want, viewers to understand about your advocacy work, about your perceptions of all the various events that are occurring? What's your takeaway?
My takeaway is, I'm a person. There's only so much I can do. What I can do is not unique to anybody, you know. I would encourage anybody to use their platforms if they feel like they want to do something that, but they can't. Go out there and try. Like years ago, I was thinking, I can't do a magazine, I can't do it. And years later, it's thriving, it's reaching places that I never thought it would reach. And I feel like I just want to encourage anybody watching that to, you know, have self-belief, in whatever you want to do, and just go out there and try. But also, I would encourage people to, you know, really connect with people, you know, and there's so many amazing people and organizations out there, and get involved in something that you're passionate about. You know, no matter where life takes you, there's one thing that will stay the same, is that when you are doing what your passion is, there's no greater feeling. So I would encourage everybody to find their passion and to really make sure they build a career around whatever that passion may be. And, you know, it would make your work so much more fulfilling.
Sinai Fleary, thank you so much. It has been very interesting, very eye-opening, and I can see, you know, the passion. I feel it, and that's just a very good way to head. Go out and try, get involved, connect to people. Thank you again.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor to share with you.
Sure.